Welcome to Trust AI Partners, powered where we dive into the cutting edge of tech innovation. Join us as we explore how AI automation is transforming the industry. If you're ready to discover the future of AI innovation and how your company can get ahead, stay tuned and connect with us for more information. I'm your host, Jim Hoover, and joining us today is Will Bowden. Bowden or Bowden?
Yeah, Bowden, thanks for asking.
Bowden, there we go. A results-oriented leader with rare blend of military, law enforcement, business, and IT experience. He's known for building high-performing teams, leveraging strong networks, and driving revenue through disciplined ops and smart go-to-market execution. He's now the CEO of Grasshopper Farms, where the cross-functional rigor meets cannabis cultivation at scale. Well, it's great to have you on. Before we dive
Thanks, Jim.
into Grasshopper Farms' journey and what's ahead in 2025, I'd love for the listeners to hear your background in your own words. Can you introduce yourself and share the path that led you to Grasshopper Farms?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. So, the quick version here is that I always had a passion for service. So I found myself serving both as a police officer and in the military once upon a time. I was a SWAT team officer. I retired from the military as a lieutenant commander. And then I also found some time somewhere in there to work for Merck, a pharmaceutical company, for quite a bit. And what I found is that those three disciplines actually prepared me for what it is I found myself doing today. But if you would have asked me 10 years ago if this would have been it, I probably would have said this is on my radar. But what it's done here is it's really allowed me to prepare for building high performing teams, going out there working in a very strenuous regulatory environment. And then going and operating in that environment that's just building. And this is an industry that has just started and is emerging from illegality and stigma, is usually how I describe it. And we're at the very early stages of that. So whether it's the time at the law enforcement, where I was a police officer, or all the time that I spent in the military, or what I learned with Merck, all of those things are helping me today to be one of the good actors in this space who are bringing cannabis to a very beneficial place within the global community and definitely within the United States market.
And what was the spark that caused that initial inspiration to start Grasshopper Farms?
Yeah, so I think it's twofold. One is the industry and one's Grasshopper Farms. And so first is probably about 15 years ago, I was looking at this industry and the fact that it was legalizing across the United States. And I had an observation. Now, I was right in the middle of still a commissioned officer within the Coast Guard. I was still working for Merck. And so there wasn't a decision for me to work in the industry because part of being in the military means that I cannot use or work within the cannabis industry. But the observation was what a neat business opportunity for other people. And then there's a lot of people that they're helping by virtue of the medicinal value of cannabis. So wouldn't you know it that the universe was listening, because the very month that I retired, I was introduced to somebody who's also former military, and we were just getting to know each other as guys. But after he learned about my experience, he asked me, he said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming working for me?" I said, "Well, what kind of business do you have?" And he was starting a cannabis business. So I went home and laughed about it with my wife, and that was my entry into the cannabis industry. But then as I started working for that other company, an aspirational multi-state operator that wanted to focus on indoor cultivation, manufacturing, and retail, I became very curious about outdoor farming of cannabis. And I was trying to figure out why more operators weren't able to produce what we might think of like a premium smokable flower from an outdoor farm. And so as my curiosity peaked, I brought the idea back into the last company I was working for. They were already leveraged doing too many things. And so I just developed this list of criteria of things that I would need to satisfy. And ultimately, if I were able to do that, I would leave that company and start my own, was the idea. So I did clear all that criteria. I ended up leaving that company, starting my own company. And here we are now in 3 different states for Grasshopper Farms.
So I'm curious. It sounds like the majority of people that were doing this prior to Grasshopper Farms, it's mostly an indoor flower, right?
Yeah, I think that the industry does lean towards indoor cultivation,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that the explanation for that is actually pretty straightforward if we kind of step back and think about it from this perspective. Now, this is just my personal perspective, but when the industry became illegal, a lot of people were already growing outside, and what they did then is they went indoors into pole barns and basements and like environments just to stay out of the sight
Hmm.
of the law, basically, to make sure that they didn't be held accountable for anything that they were doing illegally that they didn't believe should be illegal in the first place. And then if we do the math of how long this product has been illegal, it's three generations. And so as people were growing indoors, they became very good at it. They would pass that down to the next either generation of friends or whomever was learning. And that information over three generations was really honed into expertise. Also, it was done in a very compartmentalized fashion. And the reason why that's so important is just because everybody was kind of doing their own thing in their own vacuum. And they were trying to share or learn from each other as best they could. But the practice was not to share because, again, sharing means you might actually get exposed and you might go to jail. So over three generations, very good at indoor growing, very good at not sharing. So when legalization takes place, all of a sudden you've got people who said, hey, I might want to try going back outside again. So some folks go outside, most people stay inside. And that was just because of where their expertise and comfort was. Now, what happens, I think, when people went outside, if they were very good indoor cultivators or indoor growers, and then you go out to outdoor farming, what you find out really quickly is that indoor growing and outdoor farming are distant cousins at best. They just don't, it's not a seamless transition or translation. So that means that you have to learn how to do those things. Also, most notably, when you're outdoor farming, you can't take an experienced farmer from one place and put them into another environment and expect they're going to have the same results because farming is more about the environment that you're in than the plant that you're growing. Right. So, not to say that that farmer who's an expert in one location can't become an expert in the other, but they have to learn their environment before they're going to be that expert. So, for all those reasons, we have a lot more indoor growers in this industry than we have outdoor farmers because the folks who went outside were producing a lower quality outdoor product. Plus, it wasn't something people were as familiar with. And we still are in an industry that's trying to emerge from illegality and stigma. So that means being indoors is out of sight, out of mind. So maybe more favorable in some of the newer geographical locations as well. For all those reasons, that's why we have a lot of indoor growth still.
And what competitive advantages does that create for you, specializing in the outdoor cultivation?
Well, I think in the near term, the competitive advantages actually will come later. So first of all, the cost to operate is going to be less for what we're doing if we just go for the amount that we produce, just strip that. However, in the current environment, when people are purchasing an outdoor product, they usually expect to pay a lot less than they would pay for an indoor product. But that's just because more of the stigma of where can you produce a higher quality product. One of the things that we are doing, and other great farmers, it's not just Grasshopper Farms, is we are proving to the industry that you can grow a very, very high premium quality product outdoors as well. And I think that there's some folks who are familiar with Humboldt County, Northern
Yeah.
California, Emerald Triangle. These are references to an area of the country of where they do produce a high quality outdoor flower. It's just not as common throughout the United States market and even globally to have seen that. So there are, I think, really good outdoor farms now that are proving to folks that we can produce a high quality outdoor product. Now, I think where the differentiation comes from that you were asking about is it's going to be in the years ahead when we have to become more competitive and we have to decrease our operational costs. That's going to be something that we're going to be able to do, I think, a little bit easier because we have less operating expenditures than an indoor grower would have, most notably power.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And can you give the audience a sense of the size and the scale of Grasshopper Farms today?
Yes, so we started out in Michigan, and so really this came to a proof of concept. So when we launched the company, we went out to the Michigan market and said, "Hey, we're going to be producing a higher quality outdoor flower," and this is something that not everybody's familiar or even comfortable saying can exist. So most people were giving us a virtual pat on the back, and they were saying, "Sure you are, go for it, good luck, kid," that kind of stuff. So we came to market and we ended up selling out at higher margins than other outdoor farms. And so we knew we were onto something. And so each year now we've produced a product that we sell out of every single year and we sell it for a higher margin than other outdoor farms do. So we took that business model and then we went to Colorado with that. We've experienced the same results there. And now we've moved into New Jersey and we expect to have the same results within New Jersey. So I think that what we're demonstrating is that, you can produce a high quality product in any of the three disciplines, indoor, greenhouse, and outdoor. You also can produce a low quality product in any of the three disciplines. It's less about where did you grow it. It's more about what did you grow. And I think now after 5 years, people are very comfortable saying that when they buy a Grasshopper Farms product, we do produce smokable flower, pre-rolls, and infused pre-rolls. The feedback that we're getting from consumers is that they like the product that we are producing, and the feedback from the retailers is that they are selling out of our product as well. So I think we're on the right track to what we're doing, and we'll continue to expand. The goal right now is 10 states.
Okay. And who is your biggest classification of customer? Is it retail or otherwise?
So we're a supplier, so we only sell to retail. So we wholesale to retail. But for us, we're not just producing something that then we sell to retail and allow them to white label and put their own name on it. We're developing a brand. So you see the logo on my shirt, you see the logo behind me as well. Grasshopper Farms aspires to be one of the premium brands within the United States market. And so to do so, we actually have two customers we need to speak to. So number one is we need to be able to speak to retailers. We want to be very good, strong operational partners with them. And two is we want to be able to speak to consumers to let them know here's our value proposition with what it is we're producing and what you can count on us for. At the end of the day, the product that we're producing is going to be a higher quality outdoor product, but really we want the consumers to have confidence in it is that they can go in and they know that they'll always have the right quality and consistency with the product that they get that has Grasshopper Farms name on it.
Okay. And tell me about the retail acquisition. How do you connect with new partners and talk to me about that process?
Yeah, so developing any market, I mean, it's different for any industry out there. The good news with the cannabis market is there's a lot of public information that has to be made available by virtue of the licensure and how the regulations exist in all the states right now. So we already have a list. It's a published list from each state that says, here's all the people that possess licenses as retailers. Now, possession of a license doesn't mean you're operational. It simply means that you've been issued a license that could be operational. So the next step in that market development is to figure out, all right, so where are the locations of these retailers? And then we go out there and we start talking to them. And it's just like any other market development initiative. You'd go out there and start figuring out which of these retailers are good actors, which of them are not good actors. This is a new industry, so I think we have a lot of cannabis enthusiasts who are trying to develop businesses. Some of them will be successful. Some of them will find out that being an enthusiast is not a business plan. So we have to develop like who out there is running a business that we believe has long-term viability in their respective market, because these licenses are only good within the states that they're in, right? So as we develop these relationships, then it's about how's our operational relationship after we decide that we want to do business together. And then the last piece I would say is that we pay very close attention to how many stores we want to be in as well, because we are by definition a craft brand. And for us, that definition means that we're going to stay at 5% or below of the market demand, market being the state, right? So that means that we're not trying to have market share of either all the retailers or have a high percentage within singular retailers. We want to have a good mix of what we might call single shingles or single locations, some of the mid-size that are going to have maybe two or three locations, and then some of the behemoths out there that are going to have, greater than 10 locations. We want to have a good mix of all of those retail partnerships that we have out there. And then after that, it's just about how are we all operating together? Is it in a business conducive way? Are we treating each other like good business partners and working with each other in this rapidly evolving and volatile industry?
Okay, so it's mostly outbound retail acquisition more so than inbound them coming to find you.
Yeah, I think that's state dependent. So
Yeah.
in Michigan and Colorado, for sure, it's all outbound. And then
Hmm.
after it's outbound and a word gets out, we might get some inbound by being at a conference or some sort of an event or something like that. But most of it's outbound. Now, with New Jersey being a newer market, actually the majority's been inbound, right? So we're receiving it from people who are already licensed. They see us on the licensure list. So they call us and they say, do you have product yet? We'd be interested in talking to you. So it's a little bit of a mix, but it's more about the state of the market.
I see. And are you able to speak publicly to any sort of top line revenue, or if not, maybe the year over year growth over the past 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, we don't really get into public, as far as the financials go for our company.
Hmm.
So that's not something we're doing. But I would say this. The first misnomer of this industry is that you're going to make a ton of money being in this industry. And that is
Hmm.
a straight up misnomer. This is a hard business. This is a hard industry. The margins are very slim. There's a lot of taxation that goes on at the federal, state, county, local levels, depending on what state you're in. So you have to run a very lean business as you get into this. My goal is to create jobs that we can pay the employees well, keep them very happy, but very secure. So we've developed business models where we've offered people jobs where we're hoping that they're going to stay with us all the way up until they retire, and they're going to be training their replacements someday. So that's what I want to do as we go into these 10 markets. The other thing that we want to prepare ourselves for is we want to be ready for when there are federal changes so that we are one of the nationally recognized brands that will exist in a post-federal legalization strategy or market as it unfolds as well.
I see. And in terms of marketing and ROI, how are you allocating the marketing budget across all the different channels, brand, and which programs are the strongest attributable to ROI?
Yeah, so this is hard, right? Because marketing is the unsung hero that nobody pays attention to, that is something that requires a lot of attention and investment, and it requires putting into the effort and financing into doing it, and you're not going to see things right away. It's one of the things that everybody throws up their hands and says, "Why are we spending money on this?" When you're in a position like Grasshopper Farms is, like we are investing in our brand. So we invested in our product, we invest in our people, we invest in our brand. And so to do that, what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that we have everything solid from our logo to our name to our communication to our social media to how our bag structure is set up and what does that communicate to consumers as they're purchasing things. As far as the ROI goes, what we just try to do is we try to pay attention to where can we gain engagement? Because I think when you're developing a brand, what you're trying to do is you're trying to be known. And the way that you're going to be known, I think, in today's world is you want to have some sort of engagement. Now, engagement, sometimes we think social media right away, and I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only part of the puzzle. I think that just word of mouth engagement also is very, very important out there. So to that end, we do a lot of things on social media, but we also do a lot of in-person events too. We might call them vendor days, where somebody from our organization is going to go to a retailer and we're going to set up shop there and we're going to interact with the employees and consumers for the better part of that day, educating them about Grasshopper Farms. We're going to say who we are, what we do, and how we do it, and why we think that we're one of the good partners that are out there in the market space today. So these are different things we do. We also go to conferences and we try to gauge like what kinds of operational partnerships will we come out of those conferences with? Where can we support each other to success and help each other within this rapidly evolving landscape?
Any direct ad placement?
So ads in the cannabis industry are very finicky and largely not allowed. So we don't do a lot of advertising per se. What we are allowed to do for the most part is education. And I think actually that's appropriate for our industry because right now I keep saying that this industry is emerging from illegality and stigma. And that's exactly what it is. If we think about this, the Reagan and Nixon administrations did a fantastic job on their drugs, the campaign against drugs, and you know, they grouped cannabis into those campaigns. And whether it was appropriate to be there or not, it's not up for debate today. It was in those campaigns. And then on top of that, you've got all kinds of other things that are out there that have helped people to formulate their own opinions. That might be that they have a son or a daughter or a niece or a nephew or somebody they know who got wrapped up into some drugs and they feel like they had a native experience because of it, so they've formed opinions on that. All the way through, we watch Narcos Mexico on Netflix and suddenly we have an opinion there too. So I think that the biggest thing that we can do as any operator within this industry is we can lean in on education. So this isn't advertising per se, but if you were to go through some of our social media feeds, you would see, I think, a lot of like, what do we do and how do we do it? We also run a very open facility format, meaning we give tours year round. We do open houses once a year, where again, we invite people to the facility so they can see what it is. But I think more importantly, so they can see what it isn't. So no ad placement, no kinds of ads that we're doing out there. I think someday that will be important, but I think for today, we're more education focused in the messaging that we're doing.
What are the biggest regulatory shifts that are happening now, and what you foresee over the next 1 to 2 years?
So regulatory shifts right now are almost exclusively at the state levels. I know there's a lot of chatter about the DEA rescheduling and what's going to happen at the federal level. We hear initiatives out there like safer banking and things like that, but all those are at the federal level, and all of those are they're kind of farther out than the 1 to 2 year range that you just gave me. So what that means now is that we have to look at the state regulatory framework and whether or not it's business conducive. And these things change very quickly as well. So the first thing we have to look at is taxation, right? So taxation does exist at the federal level. There's a tax code called 280E. And if anybody wants to go Google that and check it out and see what that is, it basically means that we don't get to have the write-offs that other businesses get to benefit from. So that means that we have a higher taxation liability than most businesses would have if they're just running a standard business in any industry within the United States. So that's first and foremost at the federal level. But then we have taxation at the state, sometimes county, sometimes local levels as well, whether you're retail or wholesale. And so taxation is a huge part of what we're doing. The other thing I think that we have to think about too is how do you get access to capital? So right now, there's a little bit of a misnomer that says that everyone thinks that we're a cash industry. We're not. There's very little cash that's being exchanged between operators. Most of the payments are being made through electronic payments or checks. And then we have full banking available to us. The banking exists at the state level. So whether that's a state credit union or a regional credit union, what it is it's a bank that doesn't have FDIC at their particular bank, which means that they're eligible to insure their banking products differently than at the FDIC level. So the Federally Insured Banking Act, it allows for the insurance to exist at your larger global and national banks, whereas the state banks have different kinds of insurance there. So I think access to capital is another really important thing for us to consider when we're talking about the businesses that are out there and how they're trying to just get off the ground. And we all know that when businesses start, sometimes they have to take on loans to continue doing business. And that's a big problem within our industry right now because we have a lot of people out there who I mentioned they're enthusiasts, so they don't necessarily have a business plan. So that's making it a little bit more risky for financial institutions and or groups and people to jump in and provide financing for operators like myself who have a great business plan that's been tested, it's been working for over 5 years, but we're amongst a sea of folks who don't have good business plans and don't have good financials to go along with it too. So there's a lot of things to consider there at the regulatory level when we think about how it is that you operate from taxation to access to capital. And then after that, you just have to make sure that you understand the regulatory requirements for working on our industry. And that means tracking, right? And so if you don't have the ability to set up a really good method of saying, here's how I got the initial product that I'm working with, here's how I created product that I am now selling, here's who I sold it to and for how much. If you can't keep up with that right there, that requirement, you're going to find yourself in a really hard place within the regulatory environment too. Again, all of this is very, very manageable and super navigable, but it's something that people have to consider as they're getting into this industry.
What's the biggest initiative that you're looking to execute over the next 6 to 12 months?
So for me over the next, I think it's more 12 months, is that I want to get into more states before there are federal changes. Now, I don't think there's going to be federal changes for probably 5 to 7 years. That's just Will Bowden's personal opinion. Okay.
Hmm.
But I do believe that I need to be aggressive in the states that we're going into by getting back to capital. It just requires capital and resources. So first we have to go into a state that has a regulatory framework that's business conducive. And then secondly, we have to be able to go in there and we have to have capital and resources to be able to go into that state as well. So for me, it's just making sure that I continue to explore and align with other partners out there that are going to be complementary into what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it.
Do you know yet which states you're going to go into, or is that still to come?
Yeah, so we always have a roadmap, but here's the things with the states and the roadmap that you're going into. You're never going to know what states you're going into until the day you decide to go into that state because the regulations change often, sometimes weekly. So right now we have our roadmap. I have 8 states that are on the roadmap beyond the 3 that we're already in. So that takes us to 11, not just 10. But what it does is it accommodates for changes that happen within states as well. So I could tell you all the states we're going into, but it doesn't mean a lick of difference
Yeah.
today because it just depends on when we're going to actually go into those, and that is contingent on capital and resources.
So, what do you see as the biggest blocker or obstacle looking forward?
Yeah, I think that there's just a lot of misinformation out there, right? So as I go and present to municipalities and I present to the residents of municipalities, we've got some natural barriers that come up in people's minds, and they're very, very important barriers.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the barriers are usually rooted in misinformation, right?
Hmm.
So I'll give you a very good example. One of the concerns that any community is going to have when someone's going to come in there and they're going to have something that's cannabis related is odor. And usually, 99% of the people who are concerned with odor, in their minds, they are referencing something that is the smoked odor, not the growing odor. And those are very, very different odors, right?
Hmm.
And so, and then how you produce it also impacts odor as well. So when you produce something inside of a building, you're going to have a compressed odor versus if you grow it outside, you're going to have a very quickly diluted and dissipated odor. So I think odor, it's a very good concern to have, but it's rooted in misnomer because we've all traveled to places where it's newly legalized and you've walked around that city and the comment is, as I smell it everywhere, right? What you're smelling is it being smoked. You are not smelling what it smells like grown, and those are very different. So I think, and that's just one example. There's lots of examples when it comes to misinformation, but I think what we have to continue to do, and this goes back to our earlier point of we have to continue with education. We have to continue with helping people to understand what's the difference between the smoked odor and the growing odor. If we just use that one example, but there's plenty of different examples of where this industry is and is it nefarious? Is it Narcos Mexico? Is it harmful to the environment? Does it make crime go up? Is it smelly? All those kinds of things.
And well, how would you describe the people that you need to educate in terms of their? Are we talking about like state level bureaucrats or otherwise?
Well, so I think at their if we go to the state level, the thing at the state level that's most important is they have to understand how the business works. Because the first thing that happens when a state legalizes and they deploy a commercial legal framework is that their intentions is to create the legalized framework, which is going to generate business for that state. But I think the other intention that we don't say out loud often enough is it's also intended that black market activity will decrease after that legal framework is deployed. What the state regulators have to understand is if they don't deploy a business conducive framework, then the black market activity is not going to go down. And we see this in places like California, New York initially, although New York has amended some of their regulations so that it will go down. We also see some changes. Just recently, Michigan actually passed a law where they're going to add some taxation on there, some significant taxation on there. And I don't think that they understand that the impact of what it is they're doing could create a black market penetration event. And the irony is that Michigan is just emerging from black market penetration, severe, well documented black market penetration acknowledged by the state and analysts alike, right? So I think that what happens then is as you increase the taxes, what the state regulators were focused on is the things it was going to pay for, roadways and schools. And when you think about that, of course, anybody's going to want to improve the infrastructure of a state or help out with the different school related activities. What they didn't think of when they did that was to say, well, we're going to tax this industry from it. And the taxation is so high, 24%, that it's going to cause a lot of operators to struggle. When the operators struggle, they're going to go out of business or they're going to make bad business decisions and they might be put into a bad position where they make a bad decision, where they start engaging in black market activity, even as a legal entity. And then as people get shut down because they can't survive how to survive in operating within that state, then I think that opens up black market penetration just to be sold on the street. So there's all these things at the state level, but I think it all boils down to you've got to create a regulatory framework that's business conducive. That's at the state level. Now, as we move down to the consumer level, I think that you've got different kinds of consumers out there. So maybe it's three groups, right? So the first group is that you have maybe your cannabis enthusiasts. These are folks that have already been using it. They already love it. They already know why they use it. They don't need to know anything else. They just need to know, where am I now accessing it? So their access is the thing that changed for cannabis enthusiasts when the framework rolls out into a state. The second group is what I like to call cannabis curious. These are folks that they don't have this like moral like question that's going on. They know about it. They know that people are using it. They're curious about it. Hey, I might want to try that for sleep is usually what you hear from folks. And so they're curious. They're not necessarily folks, though, who want to go out and talk broadly, publicly, that they are cannabis curious, even though they are. And by the way, I think that's the largest group out of the three. Then the third group is going to be your staunch opponents. These are your folks that no matter what information that they receive, they are not going to be for this product or this industry or the use of the product. And it's not for us to change their minds, but it is up to us to provide information to everybody. The highest compliment that I think I've ever received at Grasshopper Farms during tours, and this happens time and time again over the last 5 years, is you have somebody who is against the product and against the industry. They come take a tour of our farm. We introduce ourselves, show them what we do, show them how we do it. That same person leaves the farm at the end of the tour. They almost say something identical, and it really boils down to this. They said, I'm still not okay with the industry and the product, but I'm okay with what Grasshopper Farms is doing. We can't receive a higher compliment of somebody who is still against something industry-wise and product-wise, but they enjoyed what we do and how we do it so much that they say, I'm good with what you're doing, right? I think those are our kind of three groups of people as we get down to the consumer level and how we got to work with them. And that all goes back to education. So education to the state on making sure that they're creating a business conducive framework that I think then achieves their financial and maybe their black market goals. Education to consumers to help them understand, what is this product and how do I use it safely and how do I use it to get the effects that I personally am seeking? And then to show the folks who are against the product in the industry that, you can still be against it, but it may be not as nefarious as you think when it comes to the people that it's serving and the people who have access to it.
I see. What are the biggest changes that you've made recently and maybe in process of now in terms of incorporating technology into the business? Which parts of the business and what's providing the largest impact?
Yeah, so from a technology perspective, I think that as a farm, we don't benefit yet from a lot of technology advances, especially like maybe with AI and things like that, when it comes to the actual cultivation activities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is because we're an outdoor farm. I
Mm-hmm.
think that indoor cultivation has benefited a bit more from that because they have a highly controlled environment where you have a lot of inputs, meaning like what are the things you did to regulate that environment and what are your outputs, meaning what did the plant produce and how much did you sell it for. We have a lot of that stuff too, but it's a little bit more difficult to then take those trends and replicate them when it comes to Mother Nature. We don't control when it rains, okay? When it rains is when it rains. Same thing when it comes to dry times and things like that. But I think that when it comes to how we use our data, this is where technology is stepping in and starting to help us to make better decisions as we're dialing in the operation. So I am a very firm believer that when you start something, you need to be very deep into your numbers and understand where your data comes from and what it is telling you. What's the story it's telling you so that you can use data to make good decisions, right? The numbers will tell us what to do is one of our mantras around Grasshopper Farms. So we started largely in spreadsheets because for us to be able to build manual spreadsheets, understand what the data is, then could lead us to platforms that would be better than the manual spreadsheet. But we wouldn't really have known which platforms were going to be appropriate for us until we were really into those manual numbers and to knowing what it is. Now, that's with the actual operations. I would say that when you get into something that's less operational, more like accounting, Understanding whether the size of your organization warrants something like a QuickBooks or warrants an entire accounting team, I think that's where you're going to have to make some operational decisions on which then financing platforms are going to help you to execute from a financial perspective there. And again, this is where the different technologies and platforms can really help you out. But that really comes down to what's the scope, what's the size, the scale, and then how do these different platforms stack up against what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
So, in terms of general operations, where do you see the biggest bottlenecks emerge, or most often?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, it's we usually need more space. Now, this is a decision for us is how do you deploy capital? And so we've built all of our space off of we're going to use it immediately. We're not going to have any empty space that we grow into later. If we're going to grow into it, we will build it later. A little bit of a different strategy. So some folks will build a 100,000 square foot building and they'll use 10,000 square feet, then they'll expand into the rest of it as they see fit. Some will launch straight into the 100,000 square feet. We chose a strategy that's more of like we'll build the first 10,000 square feet and then we'll build the next 10,000 square feet when we have the capital to do so, but we also have the demand to do so. Those two got to balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, for us, having more indoor space to do the different activities that we do, not growing, I mean, but all the other activities that we do is something that we analyze very often, and we'll continue to pursue that operational space very aggressively as we continue to expand within the US market.
I see. And I know you mentioned using the state license lists to identify your retail partners and retail channels. Have you experimented with any other strategies to identify those retail accounts?
There's some data houses that are out there right now, so and we've worked with some of them a little bit to see what do you have. I think the industry is a little bit new to depend on some of the data that's published out there. Now, it's not because the data houses aren't doing their job. I think they're doing a fantastic job with data science. I think that actually this is more on the operators. Now, if we think about where the industry is, and again, I keep saying it was born out of illegality and stigma, you
Mm-hmm.
still have a lot of operators who are operating in a way that is, this is private information. I don't share it. So we don't have a complete picture all the time of the data that we would need, I think, to make some of those better, more agile decisions that might come from data house analyzation. So as the data science does get better, I think it's only going to get better when more of that data is more publicly available. But right now, there's kind of two barriers to entry, at least for us. Number one is how much data do they have? And number two, how much are they charging to use the data? So for me and my team, we have plenty of public information that's available to us to allow us to make our business decisions. Now, this depends largely on what kind of an operator are you, where are you operating, and things like that. So there's other variables for sure. But for what we're trying to do out there right now, I think that a lot of the public information that's available to us is serving us well and helping us to make good numbers-based decisions.
And what are the 3 to 5 core KPIs that define success for Grasshopper Farms right now?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, you got to be able to work within a budget, right? So we have to know what is our operating budget. We got to be able to work within that. We have to continually say, how can we scale back on some of that operational cost so that we can eventually increase profitability? So job one is just to get into the black, which we are. Job two then is to make sure that we provide a very stable platform, meaning we've worked within our budget so that any volatility with the market isn't going to threaten any of the positions that we've offered to any of our employees out there. So KPI, working within the budget. Then the second thing of working in the budget then is what did we produce? So that is both from a quantity perspective and a quality perspective. And both of those are measured, right? So quantity being pounds and then quality being the lab reports that we get back. The lab reports are going to tell us what our cannabinoid and terpene profiles are. I know a lot of times we talk about THC percentages, but the value of this plant and the effects that it offers goes way beyond THC. And THC is only one of the variables that helps people to achieve the effects that they're looking for. So when we're looking at our lab results, we're looking for things like, okay, so what do we produce from a THC, CBD, CBG, CBN perspective? What are the different terpenes? What percentages of those are in there? Also on the KPIs, what are the percentage of things that we do not want to see in there, right? So we have very strict testing protocols that we have to adhere to by each state. And so that's everything from foreign matter contamination to things that you're not allowed to have in there, like heavy metals and pesticides and things like that, all the way to total yeast and mold and mildew, right? And so we want to see the things that we want to see in there, cannabinoids and terpenes. We also want to see that we don't have the things in there that we're not allowed to and shouldn't have in there too. The list of other things I chose. So these are some of the KPIs that I think of. I think another KPI though that we strive to have is a really awesome workforce. So that's a workforce that's motivated, that comes to work. So we might think of the way to measure that off of retention, maybe. So I think that we have a retention rate that's above 95%, which is a little unheard of within our industry. And I think within a lot of industries for that matter, too. So we have a very high employee retention rate right now, which I think speaks to the job satisfaction that we're offering to our employees, not only just what they do, but then how they're compensated and supported to do it as well.
Are you able to say how big the team is now?
Yeah, so we have about 74 people in all three states that are working
Okay.
full time, and then we'll scale up with temporary employees when it comes to, or part-time employees, I should say, when it comes to things like heavy lifts like harvest and things like that.
I see. And I'm curious, looking back over the past 5 years, you're in an industry that's constantly changing, as you pointed out. There's a lot of different moving parts that you need to adjust with on a regular basis. What's been the biggest lesson or the most valuable lesson you've learned of what not to do?
What not to do? Well, it's maybe the opposite of this. I think a lot of people really focus at going all in on like, their buildings and their equipment and their nutrients and stuff like that. I think all those things are really important. I think, though, what not to do is to focus on those things as the first thing. The first and foremost thing that you focus on is your people. And I think this goes with anything in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're building a team that's playing sports or you're building a team that's executing in business or anything else out there that you're doing, your people are the thing that are going to make or break what you're doing. And, in this industry, it's curious because there's a lot of folks who believe that they're doing something that's proprietary in nature. I have not come across really much of anything that's truly proprietary in what it is that they do. I think there's people who are doing things that are less understood or less known, but I think that at the end of the day, if you want to be a cultivator, if you want to be a manufacturer, if you want to be a retailer, I think that there's plenty of information out there to go teach you how to do that and do it well. At the end of the day, though, you have to be able to develop your business and your plan, and then you've got to hire the right team and you've got to support the right team to doing it. So, to me, I know I'm kind of taking your question the other direction here,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say the thing I see a lot of people doing is they don't take care of their team. So whether that's ownership groups that don't listen to their team, whether that's ownership groups who pay themselves but don't pay their teams well, whether that's just teams who don't feel appreciated, like their ideas aren't floating up and they aren't coming to fruition. These are all things that I would be very cautious in not doing. The other thing that I would caution people and not do is just because you're an enthusiast and a supporter of cannabis doesn't mean that you have a business plan. And I think that if you want to have a business plan, either learn how to develop one and deploy one or hire somebody. That could be a partner, that could be an employee, but hire somebody to help you do that. I see a lot of folks who are cannabis enthusiasts who go out there and they start a business because they really like cannabis. And I like cannabis is not a business plan in the same way that if I like wine, that doesn't mean you go buy a vineyard, or I like food, that doesn't mean you go buy a restaurant, right?
Yeah, well said. Anything else that you wanted to mention to the audience? You want to highlight that we haven't discussed so far? Well,
I think that this is just a rapidly evolving industry, and it's an exciting one at that too. And I think that for anybody who happens to hear this, the one thing that I would ask to encourage them to do is really think about, where do you get your information about cannabis? What conclusions have you come to about cannabis, and where did they come from? Did they come from education? Did they come from word of mouth? Did they come from social media? Did they come from watching videos? Did they come from person who had a positive or negative experience from that? And all I would say is that all of that information is fine and correct. Use it though as the starting point, not the ending point. One of the things that I would say from an education perspective is Dr. Sanjay Gupta is a world-renowned neurosurgeon who contributes to CNN and otherwise. And for a long time, he was an opponent of the industry. And one day he actually reversed himself. And he said, you guys, I got it wrong. Here's what he said. And I'm not going to get it verbatim, but if you go look this up online, you'll find that what he said is that the body of work that he was researching was largely studies that were actually designed to show the ill effects of cannabis. And so they were designed in ways that they were actually showing, they were proving that what they thought the hypothesis was actually true, the conclusion per the study. But what he didn't have access to, or he wasn't prioritizing, is all the studies that were studying the good effects and the benefits of cannabis that are out there as well, right? And so once he started reviewing that work, he found that, oh my gosh, there's so much more positive, beneficial work that's out there for cannabis than there is against for human beings who use cannabis as well. And so he reversed himself there. So I would just say that, like, our job as individuals is not to go change minds. I would say that our job is to encourage people to get educated on what this is and what this isn't. This product is just like anything else. It has great health benefits for those who use it responsibly, and it has the potential to be abused like anything else. You know what we don't say out loud is water can be abused. You can drink too much water. I mean, nobody, I think, is going and not buying Tide Pods now, even though we went through this horrible period of time where people were doing Tide Pod challenges where they were trying to eat Tide Pods, right? Like there's potential for anything to be misused or abused. And I think that this product has been more so highlighted for its recreational use and misuse than it has for its medicinal use and responsible use. And I think there's way more medicinal use out there going on than misuse that's going on out there too. So I would just ask everybody, challenge yourself. Where did you learn about cannabis? How much do you actually know about cannabis? And then again, it's not wrong. Just use that as your starting point and then go get curious and go learn more about it. And don't just look for people who are going to tell you what's wrong with it, because they're going to have good information. Also look for people who are going to educate you on the benefits of this industry and this product and how it's helping people to sleep better, how it's helping people to be less anxious and stressed, how it's helping people to unwind, how it's helping people to have a healthier relationship with opioids and alcohol, how it's helping people to be more social with folks as well, how it's helping people with epilepsy, how it's helping people with Parkinson's, how it's helping people with cancer. The list goes on and on and on. I would say that the greatest use globally right now, medicinal use, is largely overlooked because it's not categorized medicinally a lot of times. And that would be for people who are using it just to get better sleep. And the reason why it's not categorized as medicinal use for a lot of people who are using it is because they think, oh, I just need to get to sleep better because I'm just in the grind right now, or I have a lot going on in my head because I have a lot going on at work, or I've got new kids at home, or whatever those things are that are causing them to lose sleep. When in fact, the loss of quantity and quality sleep is the number one health concern of all human beings globally, greater than anything else in the world if we put everything else together. But we're not treating them all together because a lot of people think that it's not a diagnosis I received. I'm just busy right now. Well, guess what? Busy non-sleep is the same as insomnia non-sleep, and it's still detrimental to your health. So if you can use something that will help you get better quantity or quality or both sleep, it's actually going to help you to have better health outcomes. And cannabis is one of the things, when used responsibly, that can help you to get better quality and quantity sleep. So there's all kinds of information out there that I would encourage people to use your starting point, know it's a starting point, and go out there and do some more research and take a look around.
Yeah, you reminded me, Will, when you were talking about not having the intention to convince anyone to change their mind on their beliefs. There was a quote that resonated with me years ago, and it was something to the effect of, I can never convince someone against their will. I can only convince them to convince themselves. And it fit along those same that same sequence. So I appreciate where you're coming from with that. And the education is key. That's everything.
It's just the education. And in fact, when we have an open house, we get together as a group and we all say out loud to each other, all right, so the cadence is this. You as an individual, when you're taking a person or group on a tour, you're going to introduce yourself, you're going to introduce the team, you're going to show them what we do, you're going to show them how we do it. That's the four things you do. Nowhere in there do we say you're going to change somebody's mind. Nowhere in there do we say we're going to argue over the benefits or non-benefits of this. None of that. There's no debating. That's just it. Stick to those four disciplines as an operator, and you will help with education, and then let people make up their own minds. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to be told what to do. What they want to hear is information that they might find valuable and educational in nature and allow them to make up their own minds. And for the person who's never going to change their mind, that is their right. So let them have their own mind and peace of mind at that.
Well, thanks for pulling back the curtain on how you're scaling Grasshopper Farms and what's next into 2025 and beyond. For listeners, if you found value in today's conversation, follow Trust AI Partners for more founder and operator perspectives at the intersection of agriculture, technology, and AI. We'll appreciate your time. Can you please let the audience know where they can get more information about the brand, the website, wherever you want to send people?
Yeah, that's great. So there's a couple different ways here. So first, grasshopperfarms.com is our website. You're going to get all kinds of information there, including our social media handles, right? So we're on all the social media platforms under Grasshopper Farms. And I think what you'll find in those social media platforms and on the website is there's lots of educational information. We're very transparent, very inclusive. You're going to see a lot of things about our team, what they're doing and how they're doing it. I would also say personally, if you ever want to look me up on social media, it's Will W. Bowden. And the reason why I point that out is I do aspire to be one of those operators where I'm trying to share a cannabis factoid every single day on all the social media platforms. And maybe it's something you've heard of, maybe it's something you haven't heard of. And so I'm just trying to be a part of the solution in offering education out there for folks as well. And I would say if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to us through our website. We get back to every single person. You can reach out through us through social media. We get back to every single person. And we just like the journey we're on, and we like to share it with whomever would like to hear about it.
And that's it for today. We'll see you on the next one.